Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us once again for our biweekly guided meditation and Dharma talk. Today is September 1st, 2025. Wow, and it's very interesting that maybe interesting isn't the right word, but we are 9 months into the year, probably beginning to wind down a lot of our activities, maybe changing of seasons and so forth, beginning new activities, right? New mindsets, new ways of thinking and actions to help develop and nurture ourselves. And that's really important. And it also highlights some of what we'll be talking about during our time together this evening with thinking about our wilted leaves or the wilted, or the wilted leaves of others. And so, but before we begin, just a brief announcement. For our YouTube channel memberships, right? We have those each and every month where for just 99 cents, you subscribe to our channel membership and receive some, background, what's going on behind the scenes or some early videos, typically shorts or photographs, imagery of behind the scenes activities here at the Blue Lotus Meditation Center. And again, with some shorts that kind of depict what is getting ready to happen and some of our ideas for that week. And so if you're interested, absolutely go ahead and check that out. Additionally, our Dharma Institute, we have two new classes came online for our intermediate levels. Go ahead and check those out. And we also have two more, our first two for the advanced level courses are in development right now. And so look for those shortly. And you can find our Dharma Institute right on our webpage. And you'll find a whole lot of interesting courses that are vital for today's times to help develop and nurture our own Dharma heart, right? Practice and strengthen our practice and nourishing our own well-being as well as the well-being of others. And so if you do have the opportunity, go ahead and check that out and see how well, see if there's any that you may be interested in. Give something a try here, something that I haven't done before. I want you to just be patient with me, please, for just a moment. Let's see if this works. I'm trying to get Instagram going at the same time as we do this. It's a new procedure for us, and I don't want to lose any of our active participants as well. So very good. So our next thing, we'll be doing the 3 jewels, right? So the 3 jewels are inherent to every single Buddhist practice, right? Whether it's a ceremony for a wedding or a ceremony for a funeral or a holiday, all types of, or any even just a Dharma talk given by the monks or whomever. The 3 jewels pay respect to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so we begin and close each one of our meetings, our Sangha sessions, the same way. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Sathu, Sathu, Sathu. So Sathu is just it's almost like an amen, right? Oftentimes it's spelled differently. Different ways you can spell it too. Sathu or Sadu, depending on where you are country-wise. And so it's like an amen. And oftentimes when the monk will speak, he'll say something kind of like if you go to church, right? If you go to church and you hear the pastor say something and the congregation will say amen. Sathu is the same, right? It's used in the same respect as that. So You can say that if you like as we go along. So tonight's topic is our wilted leaves or your wilted leaves. We all have them from time to time. If we don't properly nourish our well-being, right? Sometimes we see them in others, wilted leaves. And good thing about when we see wilted leaves, right? There's still an opportunity to nourish them. And so that's what the our guided meditation is on. It's nurturing ourselves or yourself with the Dharma. So let's begin by taking a moment to settle our bodies into a comfortable position. You may close your eyes or keep them slightly open with a soft focus, looking downward a few feet in front of you if you choose. Breathe in. Pause. And breathe out. Then as you sit there, know that you are warmly invited to allow a half smile to rest on your face as well. Lift your spine and allow your shoulders to soften. And soften your belly as you continue settling in. Breathe in. Pause. And breathe out. And let's meditate on nurturing yourself with the Dharma. As you breathe naturally, bring your awareness inward. Imagine that each breath is like a soft wave washing through you, carrying away tension and welcoming calm. Now, gently bring to mind the word Dharma. The truth, the teachings, the path of wisdom and compassion. And see it as a gentle light within you. A presence that nurtures and supports you in every moment. With each inhalation, imagine drawing this light into your heart. Warm, steady, nourishing. And with each exhalation, allow any heaviness, any self-criticism, any sense of not being enough to gently dissolve. Notice how the Dharma does not demand perfection from you. It simply invites you to rest in awareness, to meet yourself with kindness. Allow yourself in this moment to be held by compassion, as if the teachings themselves were embracing you. If your mind wanders, simply return to the breath and this inner light, and repeat silently to yourself, "May I be well. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering." Let these words sink in like seeds of care planted in the fertile ground of your heart. And feel how the Dharma nourishes you. Not as something distant, but as a living presence within. It reminds you that you already carry wisdom, that kindness is your true nature, that awakening is possible here and now. And as we bring this meditation to a close, go ahead and take one more deep breath in, filling yourself with this nourishing light. And exhale slowly, releasing into ease. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes, carrying with you the sense of being supported, nurtured, and embraced by the Dharma. Very good. It's important that we reflect on ourselves with compassion, understanding our own wisdom that we do have. Sometimes we don't listen to it, right? If we're perhaps in the heat of the motion or highly charged, with some type of sensory experience, but we have it within us. And so bringing that awareness, that pause and presence into the foreground is vital for our own well-being. And so for tonight's talk, our wilted leaves, we have some plants outside, some basil that we kind of forgot that we had it out there for a little bit, to be truthful, and kind of just allowing the weather to take place on its own, right? Whether it's raining or sunshine or whatnot. And there was a few days of just dryness, right? It was really warm outside and dry, not a lot of moisture. And I noticed these basil plants that we have, that the leaves, right? They were kind of droopy, right? Kind of shriveled a little bit, right? Plant's still alive, of course, but then it got me thinking, right? That, when we notice a plant, right, that has wilted leaves, We oftentimes wonder, can we bring it back to life? Sometimes we're too late, right? But oftentimes we may not be, right? So we can think about, what happens when you don't water those plants for several days, right? Again, think about how they look. They're droopy, they're shriveled, right? The plant looks sad, right? Even though they don't have eyes and nose and a face, they look sad, right? And they're dry and brittle, and they're just unhealthy overall, right? But the good news is, if it's not too far along, you know, we can nurture it back to health. We can rejuvenate it. So what do we do? What's the very first thing that we do when we find a plant in this condition? We go back inside, right? We get a pitcher or a cup of water, right? And we water it. Then after that, we continue to nurture it, right? We look at it, we make sure it's okay. We prune it if we need to, get rid of any dead leaves. We take good care of it, right? We take much better care of it once we're aware that, hey, this guy is not doing too well, right? And again, oftentimes there can be times where it's just totally gone, right? And nothing you can do. Too far gone for that particular plant in that particular instance. But we always give it a try, right? I guess unless it's really brown and wilted and it's been like 3 months, perhaps not. But if it's only been a few days, we certainly give it our best efforts. And now that we're aware of it, we keep a better eye on it. We become better caretakers to that plant. But the same goes for people, right? Same goes for people, right? So we can shift our view now from the analogy of this plant to a person. Think about when a person, right, is not properly nurtured and suffers. How do they look? And how do they respond to situations? This is important because not everybody's the same. And so I have culminated a list of attributes, that we may find. And it's certainly not, all inclusive or all exclusive either. So, but just something to at least get ourselves thinking about. And perhaps we can think about ourselves in some of these situations. Like, are we nurturing ourselves, or are we lacking, right, that nutrition, that uplifting sensation of others and ourselves? And one of the first things we kind of look for, right, unhappy or even happiness in a person. This is, so when I say happy and unhappy, we have to remember in these situations, happy and unhappy people aren't plants in this case, right? In these instances, well, in all instances, people aren't plants. And people are very good at masking or hiding their sentiment and their feelings. Sometimes we can, we may come across one of our best friends who may be, experiencing, depression, but they may be smiling entirely on the outside, right? Or perhaps a coworker. They may be very jovial, right? Very gregarious and want to hang out with you and do all those things that we think happy people do. But yet inside, they may be unhappy. And so we do have to be careful with the term happy and unhappy when we're dealing with people. So we have to be more mindful about what we say and what we do. And that's where we can actually kind of fall onto a lot of the Noble Eightfold Path, right? With right mindfulness, right speech, and right action, right? When we're dealing with people. But some of the other qualities that somebody who is wilting, right, on the inside and may display it on the outside, perhaps they're reclusive, right? Maybe all they want to do is spend time inside not be around people. I know there's a lot of social commentary about how, you know, I just don't like to be with people. I don't like to, be around everybody. And that can be dangerous. All right. That can be signs of unhappiness. Right. Could be, right. There's times that we all do like to be by ourselves, right? Especially in meditation, perhaps, or just after even a rough day at work. Maybe we do need some time to relax and collect ourselves. So being reclusive could be a long term, right? A long term uh, sign of, wilted leaves within ourselves, which can lead to depression. Excuse me. Which can lead to depression. And again, we may not know that someone is feeling depressed. And remember, I believe it was Robin Williams, the comedian, who passed away by suicide several years ago. People do not fake depression. People fake happiness. So somebody isn't typically going to pretend that they're all depressed and unhappy and so forth, right? They're going to pretend that they look well and happy, right? And that's why I mentioned at the very beginning the differences between happy and unhappiness, and that people are very good at hiding depression. But another quality that perhaps someone will display, they're angry, always raising their voice, short-tempered. That is a sure sign of wilted leaves, of unhappiness, that someone is consistently angry, raising their voice, perhaps even violent to some degree, physically, right? Not just verbally. Judgmental is another one. Always judging someone else, or what another group of people, or what somebody else says or does, how they dress, how their hair looks, what their religion is, what decisions they made or did not make. Very judgmental. So when somebody is judgmental, right, that's also a sign of projection, right? They may be projecting themselves, that individual, onto other groups of people. And they may be petty, right? Pettiness, like the most minute thing, can be a symbol or a sign of the quality of unhappiness, of wilted leaves. Perhaps you were 10 minutes late to, picking your daughter or son up from an activity, or maybe you didn't put the toilet seat down, right? Pettiness. And we oftentimes hide our starvation, right, with sarcasm, right? When somebody is sarcastic all the time, trying to be funny, but hiding it, right? An evil or a mean-spirited comment with humor, right? Sarcasm is certainly a sign of, or a quality of being unhappy, right? Our wilted leaves. But so can being carefree or thrill-seeking, right? Being carefree or thrill-seeking. And I think about the individuals who do life-threatening, activities, looking for that sensation, like trying to find something to fill the void of emptiness that they feel inside. Right. And same thing with being carefree. A little too much. We have to be balanced in our carefree. We can be, nonchalant to some degree and relaxed and with the leaf flowing, down the stream. But we also have responsibilities at times, not just to ourselves, but to others as well. Or they're fearful is another quality. perhaps afraid to leave the house, afraid of experiences. Maybe they're afraid of relationships with themselves or even with others, afraid of loss, right? And so oftentimes someone may seek fulfillment in the external world, right? Looking for those experiences that are not nurtured within us, our own feelings, our own emotions. And so not knowing how to feel, right? Or when those tough feelings do arise, maybe from loss of a loved one or a pet or a career or a home, how do we handle those types of hard emotions, right? And so seeking fulfillment in that external world, again, thrill seeking to some degree can be that. But understanding that impermanent, all of those activities, all those hard feelings that we experience, right, that we try to mask or substitute with something else, right, are impermanent, and they will never, ever give us that lasting joy that we seek, right? Because it's impermanent. So how can we combat this? How can we nurture ourselves and nurture ourselves, wholesomely with the Dharma, right? Well, we seek fulfillment within, just like in that guided meditation, right? Nurturing ourselves with the Dharma. We look within, imagining the Dharma as a light, lighting us, warming us, illuminating the way inside. You'll never be happy if you're always looking for pleasure and fulfillment outside. Fulfillment begins inside. That's where it is lasting. And learning to release attachment. If you got fired from your job, you got fired from your job. And maybe you got let go, laid off. Sure, you can be sad about it. It was something that you obviously needed, right? I needed to, right? Bills to pay and so forth, support our family. But holding on to the anger, to the grief, to the uncertainty, we need to learn to release those attachments. And we can do that by cultivating mindfulness. And we often think of mindfulness as being present and aware in the current moment, and that is true. But what do we do from there, right? What are our behaviors? And that's how we have to look for the fulfillment within us. What are those behaviors? What are those mindsets that we have to nurture? And we can practice sympathetic joy. What does that mean? Sympathetic joy, happiness for others. If somebody gets a benefit, a situation that is very helpful towards them or for them, be happy. Be happy for that person because they now have something that helps alleviate their suffering. It does not matter what it is, how big or how small it is to you. It's big for them. You may not even agree with it. Why does somebody else get these good, benefits and I don't? When we think like that, we will not be happy with ourselves. So we have to practice sympathetic joy, happiness for others when something advantageous or beneficial or uplifting for someone else. Maybe they do win the Powerball, right? And non-selfish actions. When we act out of selfish actions, we're always putting ourselves first. right? Putting ourselves above others. But that only goes so far. That generates competitiveness, arrogance, exclusion. But when we practice non-selfish actions, helping someone else, sharing, credit. Maybe you are in school, in university or high school, and you're working on a group project. Share, the rewards of those actions, right? And not hogging up the project to yourself, for example, because you think you can do it better. Share it among somebody else. So non-selfish actions and living with integrity and gratitude. Try this. For the next day or so, and if you can do it for the whole week, perfect. But at least for the next day or so, be grateful for whatever happens to you. Don't be, I got another bill in the mail. I'm never going to overcome this, right? Be grateful. Because if it was a medical bill, maybe you received treatment and you're living, right? Or your spouse is living or your child is living, right? Or you got some type of, diagnosis which will help you in some way. Or maybe you just simply make the traffic light. Or maybe you don't make the traffic light. Be grateful. Maybe something bad could have happened if you tried to beat the light. I've seen that enough times. And that's a conversation I have with my daughter, to not try to beat lights for safety. And then understanding impermanence. When we understand impermanence, we know that whatever it is, good, bad, or neutral to our perspective, won't be around forever. Being patient. And when we are patient, we develop wisdom. And like how I mentioned the Powerball earlier, maybe that is good for some time. Maybe sometime in the future it won't be so good. So being mindful of impermanence. And finding joy in effort, not the result. Being grateful that you can work on something, right? It's the path that you're on, not the destination. You probably heard that one before, right? It's the path that you walk, not necessarily the destination that you arrive at. So find joy in the effort, the hard work, even if it's easy. It doesn't even have to be hard. Right? Maybe it is simply as responding to an email, or smiling back at somebody who smiles at you. That's the effort. Or even if you wave to someone and they don't wave back, you still wave to them. Maybe they looked at you funny when you wave to them. That's the effort. And then to help nurture all of those qualities, right? Meditation. Meditation is what leads us to wisdom and patience, right? Meditation to help nurture all of those qualities, those wholesome qualities that we just kind of discussed and talked about. But how about towards others? Right? How do we use that Dharma to nurture others? Well, we have to be mindful about this as well. We want to nurture their watered leaves, right? So that they can become firm and shiny again and do what leaves are supposed to do instead of wilted. We simply just be a role model, right? Being a role model with our integrity and gratitude, for example, that inspires others. They see how you respond. And then they may even say, oh, I can never do this, but they can. It's sitting in the back of their head and they give it a try. You can reach out to someone. Maybe there is a new coworker or even an old coworker that, maybe doesn't seem to get invited, right? So reaching out and being inclusive, even after many rejections, maybe it just takes time, for them. And even if somebody continuously rejects, your inclusive invitations, they still think about it. They still remember that. And then at the same time, in all of those, don't be overbearing. Don't be forceful. And the 70s and 80s vernacular, just be cool about it. Right? Hey, you want to come with us? We're going to go bowling this weekend. Or we're going to go to the cinema, to the movies. You want to come? They say no, that's cool. Right? Just kind of invite them the next time. So being overbearing is not what we want, right? When we're trying to nurture others. It's simply the fact that they're being invited, that they recognize. All right. And so our next talk is on September 15th. The working title right now is Practicing Nonviolence in Times of Stress and Uncertainty. Our next talk will certainly talk about nonviolence in our society and how we respond appropriately with the Dharma, following Buddha, right? His leadership, his example, right? So please feel free to join us. Activate the bell on this. I think that's what they say, right? There's a bell notification on here, but certainly you'll find it on our website and our YouTube channel for the next scheduled talk. So September 15th, 6 p.m. Central Time, practicing nonviolence in times of stress and uncertainty. And with that, my friends, thank you for coming, and we wish you all many blessings in opening your Dharma heart.